You know, Lauren's the only reason this family stays together, Evelyn said, her voice sharp and certain as she passed the mashed potatoes across the table. Evelyn's tone was sharp and definite as she served the mashed potatoes, stating with absolute certainty that Lauren was the sole unifying force of their family. I glanced up from my plate, biting back the retort forming on my lips. My eyes lifted from my meal, and I stifled a sharp comeback before it could leave my mouth. Across the table, Lauren flashed her perfect smile, basking in the praise like it was her birthright. Lauren, sitting on the other side of the table, wore a flawless smile, soaking up the flattery as if she were entitled to it. Mom, that's not true, David said quietly, breaking the tension only slightly. David softly interjected, "That's not right, Mom," which only slightly eased the tense atmosphere. "Oh, David," Evelyn scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "You don't see it because you don't want to. Lauren's always the one keeping the peace, making sure we stay close. Natalie's fine, but she's not as involved." Evelyn scoffed and waved a hand, brushing him off. "You're just choosing not to see it. David, Lauren is the one who consistently keeps the peace and brings us together. Natalie's okay, but she just isn't as engaged." Her words stung, but they didn't surprise me. This had been the narrative for as long as I could remember. Her remarks hurt, though I wasn't shocked. This was a story I'd heard my entire life. Lauren was the glue, the peacemaker, the family's shining star. And me, I was just the dutiful daughter-in-law, always fine, but never enough. Lauren was portrayed as the family's binding force, its primary mediator, and its most brilliant member. As for me, I was merely the obedient, acceptable, but never truly valued. My name is Natalie, and I've been married to David for 8 years. I'm Natalie, and I've been David's wife for 8 years. From the moment I joined his family, I knew I was stepping into a dynamic where I'd always be second best. The instant I became part of his family, I realized I was entering a situation where I'd always come in second. Evelyn. My mother-in-law adored her daughter, Lauren, with a ferocity that bordered on blindness. My mother, Evelyn, loved her daughter, Lauren, with an intensity that made her completely oblivious to her faults. Lauren could do no wrong. And I was tolerated. Lauren was viewed as flawless, while I was, at best, simply endured. That it wasn't that I didn't try. I cooked meals, hosted family gatherings, and stepped in whenever there was a crisis. I made an effort. I cooked, organized, and offered help during emergencies. But no matter what I did, Evelyn's praise always found its way back to Lauren. However, no matter how hard I tried, Evelyn's compliments inevitably circled back to Lauren. I cleaned up after a chaotic family dinner. Evelyn would thank Lauren for organizing the evening. If I tidied up after a messy family meal, Evelyn would thank Lauren for planning it. If I resolved a last-minute problem, Evelyn would say, "That's just Lauren's influence, keeping everything in order." If I fixed a sudden issue, Evelyn would claim it was Lauren's influence that kept things running smoothly. At first, I tried to win her approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, she'd see my worth. Initially, I sought her approval, believing that if I worked hard enough, she would recognize my value. But as the years went on, I realized that Evelyn's biases weren't about me. They were about her own need to put Lauren on a pedestal. But with time, I understood that Evelyn's favoritism wasn't about me at all. It was driven by her own compulsion to idealize Lauren. The dinner dragged on, with Evelyn's comments cutting up deeper as the evening progressed. The dinner felt endless, and Evelyn's remarks became more hurtful as the night went on. "Natalie's always so quiet," she said at one point, smiling at Lauren. "You're the one who brings the energy to this family. Natalie is always so silent," she remarked at one point, smiling at Lauren. "You're the one who brings life to this family." I smiled politely, my hands clenched under the table. I forced a polite smile. Gripping my hands tightly beneath the table, David gave me a small, apologetic glance, but he didn't say much. He rarely did when it came to his mother's favoritism. David shot me a quick, sorry look, but he said little. He usually stayed quiet when his mother played favorites. By the time dessert was served, I'd retreated into my own thoughts. I'd withdrawn into my mind. By the time dessert arrived, I didn't need Evelyn's validation. I reminded myself I'd learned to find strength in my actions, not her words. I reminded myself that I didn't need Evelyn to validate me. My actions, not her words, had become the source of my strength. Still, as I cleared the plates and watched Lauren laugh with Evelyn, a part of me couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for the truth to surface for Evelyn to see who was really holding this family together. Even so, as I cleared the dishes and watched Evelyn and Lauren laughing together, I couldn't help but wonder how much longer it would be before the truth came out, before Evelyn realized who was genuinely keeping the family from falling apart. Later that night, as David and I drove home, the silence in the car was thick. The car was filled with a heavy silence as David and I drove home that night. He kept glancing at me, probably trying to gauge my mood, but I didn't give him much to work with. He kept looking over at me, likely trying to figure out how I was feeling, but I didn't give him any clues. Finally, he broke the quiet. "I'm sorry about my mom," he said, his voice low. He finally spoke, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry about my mom," he said. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. "Why are you apologizing for something she does every time we see her?" I gave a short laugh and shook my head. "Why are you saying sorry for something she does every single time we're with her?" "I don't know," he admitted, gripping the wheel tighter. "I guess I feel like I should say something, but I never know how to make it better." "I'm not sure," he confessed, holding the steering wheel tighter. "I just feel like I should say something, but I never know what will help." "David, it's not your fault," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Your mom has always made it clear who she thinks holds this family together, and it's not me. Nothing you say is going to change that. This isn't on you, David," I replied, but the words felt empty. "Your mom has always made it obvious who she believes holds the family together, and it's not me. Nothing you can say will change her mind." He frowned, but didn't argue. That was the thing about David. He hated conflict, especially when it came to his mom. He frowned, but didn't push back. David was like that. He couldn't stay in conflict, particularly when it involved his mother. When we got home, I went straight to the kitchen and started putting away leftovers from the dinner I'd prepared before we left. The moment we arrived home, I went directly to the kitchen to store the leftovers from the meal I'd cooked earlier. Cooking had always been my way of unwinding, a small act of control in a world that often felt chaotic. Cooking had always been how I relaxed. A small way to feel in control in a life that often felt chaotic. David leaned against the doorway, watching me. She doesn't mean it, right? She just gets caught up in her idea of Lauren. David stood in the doorway, watching me. She doesn't mean it, She just gets carried away with her image of Lauren. I turned to face him, the frustration bubbling to the surface. It's not just about Lauren DeVete. It's about the fact that no matter what I do, your mom refuses to see it. I turned to him, feeling a wave of frustration. This isn't just about Lauren, David. It's about how your mom completely ignores everything I do, no matter what. I work hard for this family. I cook, I clean, I make sure we're all taken care of. And she acts like it doesn't even matter. I work hard for this family. I prepare the food, I clean the house, I make sure everyone is cared for, and she acts like none of it counts. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, Natalie. I see it, and I appreciate everything you do. David sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I know, Natalie. I see it, and I'm grateful for everything you do. Then why don't you say something to her? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Then why don't you talk to her about it? I asked, my voice coming out harsher than I meant it to. He hesitated, then shrugged. Because I don't think she'll listen. And honestly, I don't want to start a fight that won't go anywhere. He paused, then shrugged. Because I don't think she'll hear me. And frankly, I don't want to start a pointless fight. I shook my head, turning back to the counter. It's fine, I said, though it was anything but. I don't need her approval. I'll just keep doing what I do, and eventually, the truth will speak for itself. I turned back to the counter, shaking my head. That's okay, I said, though it wasn't. I don't need her approval. I'll just keep doing my part, and eventually, my actions will speak for themselves. As I cleaned up the kitchen that night, I thought about Evelyn's words and Lauren's smug smile. While I was tidying up the kitchen that night, Evelyn's comments and Lauren's self-satisfied smile came to mind. They didn't know half of what I did to keep this family afloat financially, emotionally, and in every other way that mattered. They had no idea how much I did to support this family, not just financially and emotionally, but in every other important way. But I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to prove it to them. Sooner or later, life would show them the truth. And when it did, I would be ready, in time. Life would reveal the truth to them. And when it did, I'd be prepared. A few weeks later, the cracks in the family's facade began to show. It didn't take long for the family's perfect image to start to crumble. It started subtly, Evelyn mentioning how money seemed tighter than usual. Lauren complaining about a canceled spa trip, at first. The signs were subtle. Evelyn mentioned being short on cash, and Lauren grumbled about a spa trip being canceled, At first, I thought it was just normal ups and downs, but soon it became clear that something more serious was going on, Initially, I assumed these were just normal problems, but it soon became obvious that something more serious was happening. One evening, David came home looking more stressed than I'd seen him in years. He dropped his bag by the door and sat heavily at the kitchen table. One night, David came home looking more stressed than I had seen him in years. He dropped his bag by the door and sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting across from him. "What's the matter?" I asked, taking the seat across from him. It's my mom, he said, rubbing his temples. She called today asking if we could lend her some money. Apparently, Lauren borrowed a significant amount from her, and now she's struggling to cover her bills. It's my mom, he replied, rubbing his temples. She called today to ask for a loan. It turns out Lauren borrowed a large sum of money from her, and now my mom can't pay her bills. I blinked, stunned. Wait, Lauren borrowed money for what? I was shocked. Wait, what did Laura borrow money for? He sighed, something about helping a friend start a business. It didn't work out, and now my mom's footing the bill. He sighed. Something about a friend's new business. It failed, and now my mom is stuck with the debt. The revelation didn't surprise me. Lauren had always been impulsive, leaping into ventures without thinking them through, confident that someone else would clean up the mess. I wasn't surprised by this news. Lauren had always been impulsive, jumping into projects without thinking them through, certain that someone else would fix the consequences. Usually, that someone was Evelyn, who never hesitated to come to Lauren's rescue. That someone was usually Evelyn, who never hesitated to help Lauren. What did you tell her? I asked. What did you say to her? I asked. I told her we'd think about it, David replied. But Natalie, I know we can't just hand over money like that. Things are tight for us to... I told her we'd consider it, David answered. But Natalie, we can't just give her money like that. Our own finances are tight. I nodded, already mentally calculating our budget between the mortgage, groceries, and the small savings we were trying to build. There wasn't much room for generosity. I nodded, already running the numbers in my head with our mortgage, groceries, and the small amount we were trying to save. We couldn't afford to be generous, over the next few days. Evelyn's requests became more frequent and urgent. She called David almost daily, her tone growing more desperate each time. Over the next few days, Evelyn called more often, and her requests became more urgent. She called David nearly every day, sounding more desperate with each call. David, you know how much I've done for this family? She said during one call, her voice trembling. If you and Natalie could just help out this once, it would mean so much. David, you know all I've done for this family? She said on one call, her voice shaky. If you and Natalie could just help me this one time, it would mean the world to me. David relayed the conversations to me, clearly torn between wanting to help his mom and knowing we couldn't afford to. David told me about these calls, clearly conflicted between wanting to help his mother and knowing we couldn't afford it. What do you think we should do? He asked one night as we lay in bed. What do you think we should do? He asked me one night while we were in bed. I stared at the ceiling, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. We can't give her money. David, not when we're barely managing ourselves. But maybe there's another way to help. I looked up at the ceiling, feeling the heavy burden of the situation. We can't give her money, David, not when we're struggling ourselves. But maybe there's a different way we can help. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I mean, I said slowly, we step in and start handling things quietly. If Evelyn's too proud to admit she's overwhelmed and Lauren's not stepping up, then maybe it's time someone else does. I mean, I said slowly, we can get involved and start managing things discreetly. If Evelyn is too proud to admit she's in over her head and Lauren isn't helping, then maybe it's time someone else did. He frowned, but didn't argue. If anyone can figure it out, it's you, he said. He frowned, but didn't object. If anyone can solve this, it's you, he said. As I lay awake that night, I began formulating a plan. Evelyn's blind faith in Lauren had led her to this mess, but I wasn't going to let her spiral further into trouble, not for her sake, but for the family's. It was time to take action, even if it meant staying in the shadows. Lying awake that night, I started to develop a plan. Evelyn's unquestioning belief in Lauren had caused this predicament, but I wasn't going to let her get into any more trouble for the good of the entire family. It was time for me to act, even if I had to do it without anyone knowing. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a calculator, poring over every detail of our finances. If I was going to step in, I needed to know exactly what we could spare, if anything. The next morning, I was at the kitchen table with a notebook and calculator, meticulously going over our finances. If I was going to help, I needed to figure out exactly what we could afford to give, if anything. David sat across from me, sipping his coffee. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, watching me flip through bank statements. David sat across from me, drinking his coffee. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, watching me go through the bank statements. "I'm not going to hand your mom cash," I said firmly, "but if we can restructure some of her bills or find a way to reduce her expenses, it might help. She's in this mess because she won't admit she's struggling, and Lauren isn't going to do anything about it." "I'm not going to give your mom money directly," I said with determination, "but if we can help her reorganize her bills or find ways to lower her expenses, it could make a difference. She's in this situation because she won't admit she needs help, and Lauren won't do a thing about it." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I hate that it's come to this. She shouldn't have to rely on you." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I hate that it's come to this. She shouldn't have to depend on you." "She doesn't have to," I replied, glancing up at him. "But someone needs to fix this before it gets worse." "She doesn't have to," I responded, looking up at him. "But someone has to fix this before it gets out of hand." I started by contacting a financial consultant I knew from work. I began by reaching out to a financial consultant I knew professionally. Over the next few days, I gathered information about Evelyn's debts, her monthly expenses, and the loans she'd taken on for Lauren's failed business ventures. In the following days, I collected all the details on Evelyn's debts, her monthly spending, and the loans she'd taken out for Lauren's failed businesses. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Credit card balances maxed out, overdue utility bills, and a looming mortgage payment she couldn't cover. What I discovered was alarming. Maxed out credit cards, unpaid utility bills, and a mortgage payment she couldn't afford. Through it all, Evelyn remained oblivious to my involvement all this time. Evelyn was completely unaware that I was involved. Didn't tell her about the hours I spent negotiating lower interest rates on her loans or finding payment plans that wouldn't drown her further in debt. Didn't tell her about the countless hours I spent negotiating lower interest rates on her loans or setting up payment plans to prevent her from sinking deeper into debt. David offered to talk to her, But I told him not to. She won't take it seriously if it comes from you, I said. And if she finds out I'm involved, she reject the help out of pride. David offered to talk to her, but I told him not to. She won't take it seriously if you tell her. I said, and if she learns that I'm the one helping, she refuse it out of stubborn pride. He didn't argue, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. He didn't argue, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. Meanwhile, Lauren remained conspicuously absent, at the same time. Lauren was noticeably nowhere to be found. Evelyn continued to sing her praises at family gatherings, saying things like, Lauren's so stressed these days. She's doing so much for everyone. At family gatherings, Evelyn continued to praise Lauren, saying things like, Lauren is so stressed lately. She's doing so much for everyone. I bit my tongue every time, knowing full well that Lauren wasn't lifting a finger to fix the mess she'd created. I held my tongue each time, knowing full well that Lauren was doing absolutely nothing to fix the problem she had caused. The weight of it all was exhausting. Between managing our household, handling Evelyn's financial crisis, and keeping up appearances at family dinners, I felt like I was juggling 1,000 plates. I was exhausted from the pressure, juggling our household, Evelyn's financial emergency, and maintaining a facade at family dinners made me feel like I was managing 1,000 things at once, but I refused to let it show. Evelyn didn't need to know how hard I was working to keep her afloat, and Lauren certainly didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing I was cleaning up after her, but I wouldn't let anyone see how tired I was. Evelyn didn't need to know how much effort I was putting in to save her, and Lauren certainly didn't deserve to feel smug about me cleaning up her mess. One night, as David and I sat on the couch after another long day, he turned to me and said, You're incredible. You know that. One night, after a long day, David and I were sitting on the couch when he turned to me and said, You're amazing. You know that. I smiled faintly, too tired to argue. Let's just hope it works, I said. I gave a weak smile, too exhausted to respond. Let's just hope this works, I said. It will, he replied, squeezing my hand, because you're the one holding everything together, even if no one else sees it yet. It will, he answered, squeezing my hand, because you're the one keeping everything from falling apart, even if they don't see it yet. 2 weeks later, I started to see the results of my work. After 2 weeks, I began to see the positive effects of my efforts. Evelyn's overdue bills were now manageable, her mortgage payments had been adjusted, and her interest rates were significantly lower. The changes weren't monumental, but they were enough to keep her afloat. Evelyn's late bills were now under control. Her mortgage payments were restructured, and her interest rates were much lower. The changes weren't huge, but they were enough to keep her out of trouble despite the progress. Evelyn's praise for Lauren remained constant. Despite the improvements, Evelyn's praise for Lauren never stopped. Lauren's been such a rock for me, she said one evening over dinner. She always knows just what to say to keep me calm. Lauren has been a great support for me, she said one night at dinner. She always knows the right things to say to keep me calm. I clenched my jaw, forcing a tight smile. That's great, Evelyn. I'm glad she's been there for you. I clenched my jaw and forced a tight smile. That's wonderful, Evelyn. I'm happy she's been there for you. David gave me a sympathetic look, but he stayed quiet. It wasn't worth starting a fight. Not when Evelyn was so blinded by her perception of Lauren. David gave me a look of sympathy but didn't say anything. There was no point in starting an argument when Evelyn was so completely devoted to her idea of Lauren. The final straw came when I overheard a phone call between Evelyn and Lauren. The last thing I could handle happened when I overheard Evelyn and Lauren on the phone. I'd stopped by Evelyn's house to drop off some paperwork related to her new payment plans. I had gone to Evelyn's house to drop off documents for her new payment plans. As I walked up the driveway, I heard her voice through the open window. "Don't worry about it, Lauren," she said, her tone warm and reassuring. "I'll figure it out. You've already done so much for this family." As I walked up the driveway, I heard her voice through the open window. "Don't you worry about it, Lauren," she said in a warm and comforting tone. "I'll handle it. You've already done so much for this family." I froze, my stomach twisting. Done so much. Lauren hadn't done a thing except create the financial mess I'd been working tirelessly to fix. I stopped, feeling my stomach twist. Done so much. Lauren hadn't done anything except create the financial disaster that I had been working so hard to fix. When I knocked on the door, Evelyn greeted me with her usual strained politeness. When I knocked on the door, Evelyn answered with her typical forced politeness. "Natalie, what a surprise," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Natalie, what a surprise," she said, moving aside to let me inside. "I just wanted to drop these off," I said, handing her the folder. "They're the finalized payment schedules for your bills. Everything should be in order now. I just wanted to bring these over," I said, giving her the folder. "These are the final payment schedules for your bills. Everything is all set now." She glanced at the papers briefly, then set them aside without much acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said, almost dismissively, "but you didn't have to go to so much trouble." She gave the papers a quick look, then put them down without much notice. "Thank you," she said, sounding almost dismissive, "but you didn't have to go to so much effort." "It wasn't any trouble," I replied evenly, though my chest ached at her indifference. "It wasn't a problem," I replied calmly, though her lack of appreciation hurt me deeply. As I drove home, the frustration boiled over. I'd spent weeks fixing Evelyn's finances, sacrificing my time and energy, all while she continued to heap credit on Lauren. On the drive home, my frustration exploded. I had spent weeks sorting out Evelyn's finances, using all my time and energy, while she gave all the credit to Lauren. David found me in the kitchen later that night, furiously scrubbing a pan. Later that night, David found me in the kitchen, aggressively scrubbing a pan. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched across his face. "What's wrong?" he asked, a look of worry on his face. "She doesn't even care," I said, my voice shaking. "I've done everything to help her, and all she can talk about is how amazing Lauren is." "She doesn't even care," I said, my voice trembling. "I've done everything to help her, and all she talks about is how great Lauren is." He sighed, wrapping his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Natalie. She'll see the truth eventually. People like Evelyn can't ignore the facts forever." He sighed and put his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Natalie. She'll figure out the truth eventually. People like Evelyn can't ignore the facts forever." I leaned into him, letting the tears I'd been holding back finally fall. "She'd better," I said quietly, because I'm done letting her take me for granted. I leaned into him, finally letting the tears I'd been holding back fall. She better, I said quietly, because I'm done with her not appreciating me. After that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with Evelyn or try to convince her of my worth. Instead, I would focus on finishing what I started that night. I decided that I would no longer argue with Evelyn or try to prove my value to her. Instead, I would focus on finishing what I had started. The truth would come out in its own time, and when it did, there would be no denying what I had done for this family. The truth would come out on its own, and when it did, there would be no way to deny what I had done for the family. Over the next few weeks, I continued to manage Evelyn's finances, streamlining her payments and negotiating better terms with creditors for the next few weeks. I kept managing Evelyn's finances, making her payments more efficient and getting better terms from her creditors. Every improvement I made strengthened her financial position, yet I remained in the shadows. Each improvement I made improved her financial situation, but I continued to work from the background. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence became more glaring. She wasn't around for family dinners anymore, claiming she was too busy. At the same time, Lauren's absence became more noticeable. She stopped showing up to family dinners, saying she was too busy. Evelyn still spoke about her as though she were some kind of savior, but the cracks in her illusion were starting to show. Evelyn still talked about her as if she were a hero, but her perfect image of Lauren was starting to crack. One afternoon, I received a call from Richard, the financial consultant I'd enlisted to help Evelyn. One afternoon, I got a call from Richard, the financial consultant I had hired to help Evelyn. Natalie, I've just finished reviewing Evelyn's account, he said. She's in a much better place now, but there's something you should know. Natalie, I've just reviewed Evelyn's account, he said. She's in a much better position now, but there's something you need to be aware of. What is it? I asked, my stomach tightening. What is it? I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. Her daughter, Lauren, has been funneling money from Evelyn's account to cover her personal expenses. It's been going on for months. Her daughter, Lauren, has been secretly moving money from Evelyn's account to pay for her own expenses. This has been happening for months. The air left my lungs. Are you sure? I lost my breath. Are you certain? Positive, Richard replied. The transfers are small enough to fly under the radar, but they add up. Evelyn might not even realize it's happening. Completely? Richard responded. The transfers are small enough to be unnoticed, but they add up. Evelyn probably doesn't even know it's happening. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Lauren wasn't just neglecting her responsibilities. She was actively sabotaging Evelyn's finances. I thanked him and hung up, my mind reeling. Lauren wasn't just neglecting her duties. She was intentionally ruining Evelyn's finances. That evening, I told David what Richard had uncovered. His face darkened as I laid out the details. That night, I told David what Richard had found. His expression grew dark as I explained the details. This has gone too far, he said. You've done everything to help my mom, and Lauren's just taking advantage of her. This is a bridge too far, he said. You've done everything to help my mom, and Lauren is just taking advantage of her. I know, I said. my voice steady. But this isn't about Lauren anymore. It's about Eveline understanding who's really been there for her. I know, I said calmly. But this isn't about Lauren anymore. It's about Evelyn finally realizing who has been there for her. What are you going to do? He asked. What are you going to do about it? He asked. I met his gaze, a newfound determination in my chest. I'm going to make sure she sees the truth. I looked him in the eyes, feeling a new sense of resolve. I'm going to make sure she sees the truth. The next day, I scheduled a family meeting. Evelyn was hesitant and Lauren was predictably late, but I didn't let it deter me. The next day, I called for a family meeting. Evelyn was reluctant and Lauren was late, as expected, but I wasn't discouraged. When we were all seated in Evelyn's living room, I handed her a folder containing the financial records Richard had compiled. Once we were all sitting in Evelyn's living room, I gave her a folder filled with the financial records Richard had put together. What's this? She asked, flipping through the pages. What is this? She asked, looking through the papers. It's the truth, I said, my voice calm but firm. Everything I've done to help you and everything Lauren's been doing behind your back. It's the truth, I said, my voice quiet but firm. It shows everything I've done to help you and everything Lauren has been doing behind your back. Evelyn's eyes widened as she read, her hands trembling. Lauren immediately tried to dismiss it. Evelyn's eyes grew wide as she read, and her hands began to shake. Lauren immediately tried to brush it off. Mom, you can't believe this. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad. Mom, you can't believe this. Natalie is just trying to make me look bad. But the evidence was irrefutable, and for the first time, Evelyn couldn't brush it aside, but the proof was undeniable. And for the first time, Evelyn couldn't just ignore it. The silence in the room was deafening as Evelyn flipped through the documents. Her hands shaking, her face pale as the reality of the situation sank in. A heavy silence filled the room as Evelyn looked through the documents, her hands trembling and her face pale as the truth hit her. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her usual confidence slipping. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her usual confidence disappearing. This can't be right, Evelyn stammered, though her voice lacked conviction. This can't be right, Evelyn stuttered, but her voice didn't sound sure. It is, I said firmly. For months, Lauren has been siphoning money from your accounts while you've been struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, I've been the one negotiating with creditors, managing your payments, and ensuring you didn't lose your home. It is, I said with determination. For months, Lauren has been taking money from your accounts while you've been having financial problems. At the same time, I've been the one working with creditors, managing your payments, and making sure you didn't lose your home. Lauren shot to her feet, her voice shrill. Mom, this is ridiculous. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad because she's jealous of how close we are. Lauren jumped to her feet, her voice high. Mom, this is crazy. Natalie is just trying to make me look bad because she's jealous of our relationship. I met her glare with calm resolve. This isn't about jealousy. Lauren, it's about the truth. And the truth is, you've been taking advantage of your mother while I've been cleaning up your mess. I looked her in the eye with calm certainty. This has nothing to do with jealousy, Lauren. It's about the truth, which is that you've been taking advantage of your mother while I've been cleaning up the mess you made. Evelyn's gaze darted between us, her expression a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Evelyn's eyes moved between us, her face showing a mix of shock and a growing understanding. Lauren, she said finally, her voice trembling. Is this true? Lauren? She finally said, her voice shaking. Is this true? Lauren faltered, her bravado crumbling. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, she muttered. I was going to pay it back. Lauren hesitated, her confidence gone. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she mumbled. I was going to pay it back. Pay it back with what? I countered, my tone sharp. Another failed scheme. Another excuse. Pay it back with what? I snapped back. Another failed plan. Another excuse. For the first time, Evelyn didn't defend her daughter. She slumped back in her chair, the weight of her favoritism crashing down around her. For the first time, Evelyn didn't stand up for her daughter. She sank into her chair, realizing the consequences of her favoritism. How could you do this, Lauren? She whispered. I trusted you. I thought you were helping me. How could you do this, Lauren? She whispered. I trusted you. I thought you were helping me. Lauren didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Lauren didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her purse and angrily left the room, slamming the door shut. That tension lingered, heavy and oppressive. Evelyn looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Natalie, I don't know what to say. The air was thick with tension. Evelyn looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. Natalie, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied, my voice soft but resolute. I didn't do this for thanks or recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do for you, for the family. But you need to understand that your blind trust in Lauren nearly cost you everything. You don't have to say anything, I answered, my voice gentle but firm. I didn't do this for thanks or recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do for you and for the family. But you need to realize that your complete trust in Laura almost made you lose everything. She nodded slowly, her tears spilling over. I was so wrong about you, she admitted. I've spent so much time praising Lauren that I didn't see what was right in front of me. You've been the one holding this family together all along. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I was so wrong about you, she confessed. I spent so long praising Lauren that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. You're the one who has been keeping this family together the whole time. Hearing her say those words felt like a release. For years, I'd carried the weight of her dismissal, trying to prove my worth through actions instead of words. Now, finally, she saw me not as an afterthought, but as the person I truly was. Hearing her say that was a huge relief. For years, I had felt hurt by her dismissal, trying to prove my value through my actions. Now, she finally saw me not as an afterthought, but as the person I truly was. David reached over and squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with pride. You've done more for this family than anyone, he said, and now they all know it. David reached out and squeezed my hand, his eyes full of pride. "You've done more for this family than anyone else," he said, "and now everyone knows it." I smiled faintly, my heart lighter than it had been in years. The truth was out, and for the first time I felt truly seen. I gave a small smile, feeling lighter than I had in years. The truth was finally out, and for the first time I felt truly acknowledged. The days following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. The days after the confrontation were filled with intense emotions. Evelyn called several times, her tone softer and more thoughtful than I'd ever heard. Evelyn called multiple times, her voice sounding softer and more considerate than ever before. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hold on to the distance I'd maintained for so long. But another part, the part that still cared, wanted to believe she was finally ready to change. Initially, I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me wanted to keep my distance, but another part of me, the part that still cared, wanted to believe she was truly ready to change one evening. Evelyn asked if we could meet for coffee. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I need to explain everything." One night, Evelyn asked to meet for coffee. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I need to explain everything." David encouraged me to go. "She's trying, Natalie," he said. This is the first time I've ever heard her admit she was wrong about anything. David urged me to go. "She's trying, Natalie," he said. This is the first time I've ever heard her admit she was wrong about something. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, Evelyn was already there, nervously stirring her tea. I reluctantly agreed. When I got to the cafe, Evelyn was already there, nervously stirring her tea. She looked older somehow, the weight of the last few weeks clearly taking a toll. She looked older, as if the stress of the past few weeks had taken a toll on her. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "Thank you for coming," she said when I sat down. I nodded, waiting for her to start. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. I nodded and waited for her to begin. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know how to make this right," she began, "but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've spent so many years putting Lauren on a pedestal, ignoring everyone else, especially you. I thought I was protecting the family by keeping us close, but all I did was push you away. I don't know how to fix this," she started, "but I need you to know how sorry I am. I spent so many years idealizing Lauren and ignoring everyone else, especially you. I thought I was protecting the family, but all I did was alienate you." Her words were raw, unpolished, and surprisingly honest. She spoke with raw, unpolished, and unexpectedly sincere honesty. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, her voice breaking, "but I need you to know that I see you now, Natalie. Everything you've done for this family, it's more than I ever gave you credit for. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful for it. I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, her voice cracking, "but I need you to know that I see you now, Natalie. Everything you've done for this family is more than I ever acknowledged. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm thankful for it." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. I was silent for a moment, letting her words register. "Evelyn," I said finally, "I didn't step in because I wanted gratitude or recognition. I did it because I care about this family. even when it hasn't always felt like I belonged. But hearing you say that, it means more than you know. Evelyn, I finally said, I didn't get involved because I wanted your thanks or praise. I did it because I care about this family, even when I felt like an outsider. But hearing you say that, it means more to me than you can imagine. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I don't want to be the person I've been, she said. I want to do better for you, for David, for everyone. She nodded and wiped a tear. I don't want to be the person I used to be, she said. I want to be better for you, for David, for everyone. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt genuine, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page, not as rivals or adversaries, but as two people who wanted the best for the family. The apology wasn't perfect, but it felt sincere, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side, not as rivals, but as two people who wanted what was best for the family. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn made small but meaningful changes. She started taking a more active role in her own finances. Attending workshops I recommended and seeking advice from professionals. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn made small but significant changes. She started taking more control of her finances, attending workshops I suggested, and getting advice from professionals. She also made a point to include me in family conversations, asking for my input and genuinely listening to what I had to say. She also made a conscious effort to include me in family discussions, asking for my opinion and actually listening to what I had to say. Lauren, meanwhile, kept her distance. The fallout from the confrontation had shaken her, and while I didn't expect an apology from her anytime soon, her absence gave the rest of us room to rebuild. In the meantime, Lauren stayed away. The confrontation had rattled her, and while I didn't expect her to apologize anytime soon, her absence allowed the rest of us to start over. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just a guest in my own family. I was a part of it. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just a visitor in my family. I was a real member of it. Over time, the family began to feel less fractured. Evelyn's effort to change wasn't perfect, but it was consistent. The family started to feel less broken over time. Evelyn's attempt to change wasn't flawless, but it was steady. She checked in with me regularly, sought my advice on matters she would have once dismissed me from, and even began expressing gratitude for the things I did, something I never thought I'd hear from her. She checked in with me often, asked for my advice on things she would have previously kept me out of, and even started showing gratitude for what I did, something I never expected to hear from her. One afternoon, as we sat in her living room, reviewing her updated financial plans, she looked up from the papers and said, I don't think I ever thanked you properly, Natalie. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and it saved me. One afternoon, while we were in her living room looking over her new financial plans, she looked up from the papers and said, I don't think I ever thanked you properly, Natalie. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and you saved me. I paused, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. I stopped, surprised by how sincere she sounded. You don't have to thank me, Evelyn, I said carefully. I just wanted to make sure the family didn't fall apart. You don't need to thank me, Evelyn, I said gently. I just wanted to make sure the family didn't collapse. She shook her head. It's more than that. You've been the foundation of this family for years, and I was too blind to see it. That's on me. But I see it now, and I'll never take that for granted again. She shook her head. It's more than that. You've been the one holding this family together for years, and I was too blind to see it. That's my fault. But I see it now, and I'll never take you for granted again. Her words settled something deep inside me. For years, I'd silently carried the burden of her dismissal, wondering if I would ever be enough in her eyes. Now, for the first time, I felt seen not for what I could do, but for who I was. Her words brought a deep sense of peace. For years, I had quietly felt the pain of her dismissal, wondering if I would ever be good enough for her. Now, for the first time, I felt truly seen not for my actions, but for who I was. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence created space for healthier family dynamics. Without her constant need for attention and Evelyn's unquestioning support, conversations became more balanced. In the meantime, Lauren's absence allowed for healthier family interactions. Without her constant demand for attention and Evelyn's blind support, conversations became more equal. David noticed the change, too. It's nice to come over and not feel like we're walking on eggshells, he said one evening as we drove home from dinner at Evelyn's house. David also noticed the change. It's good to visit and not feel like we have to be so careful, he said one night as we drove home from dinner at Evelyn's. It is, I agreed. Though I knew it was more than just Lauren's absence, Evelyn's efforts to repair our relationship had brought a sense of calm to the family that I hadn't realized we'd been missing. It really is, I agreed, though I knew it wasn't just because Lauren wasn't there. Evelyn's efforts to fix our relationship had brought a sense of peace to the family that I hadn't even realized was missing. At work, I found myself reinvigorated. The challenges I'd faced with Evelyn had taught me more than I expected about patience, resilience, and the power of staying true to my values. Those lessons spilled over into my professional life, giving me a renewed sense of purpose. I felt refreshed at work. The difficulties with Evelyn had taught me so much about patience, resilience, and the importance of staying true to myself. These lessons influenced my professional life, giving me a new sense of purpose. One day, as I was wrapping up a meeting, Evelyn called. I'm thinking about hosting a family dinner, she said, her tone hopeful. It's been a while since we all sat down together, and I'd like to make it special. Would you help me plan it? One day, as my meeting was ending, Evelyn called. I'm thinking of hosting a family dinner, she said hopefully. It's been a while since we all had a meal together, and I want to make it nice. Would you help me plan it? Her request was simple, but it carried so much weight. Of course, I said, smiling. I'd love to. Her request was simple, but it meant so much. Of course, I said, smiling. I'd be happy to. As I hung up, I felt a warmth I hadn't associated with Evelyn in years. She wasn't perfect, and our relationship wasn't magically fixed, but it was moving in the right direction. And for the first time, I felt like I had a place at the table, not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. As I hung up, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt from Evelyn years. She wasn't perfect, and our relationship wasn't magically fixed, but we were moving in the right direction. And for the first time, I felt like I had a true place in the family, not because I demanded it, but because I had earned it. The family Dinner, Evelyn Plant, was unlike any we'd had before. There was a lightness to the atmosphere, a warmth that hadn't existed in years. The dining table was set with care, the food thoughtfully prepared, and the conversation flowed naturally. The family dinner Evelyn organized was different from any we'd had before. The mood was light, and a warmth that had been missing for years filled the air. The table was set with care, the food was prepared with thought, and the conversation was easy. For once, there was no tension, no subtle digs or favoritism overshadowing the evening. For once, there was no tension, no hidden insults, and no favoritism clouding the night. Midway through the meal, Evelyn raised her glass. "I just want to say something," she began, her voice steady but emotional. In the middle of the meal, Evelyn raised her glass. "I just want to say something," she started, her voice steady but emotional. Everyone fell silent, the clinking of forks and knives stopping as we turned to her. "For years, I've seen this family through one lens, one that wasn't always fair," she said. Everyone became quiet, and the sounds of forks and knives stopped as we all turned to her. "For years, I've seen this family in a way that wasn't always fair," she said. Her gaze shifted to me, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the room. "Natalie, I owe you an apology. I didn't recognize everything you've done for us, for me, but I see it now. You're the reason this family is still standing, and I'll never forget that." She looked at me, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the room. "Natalie, I'm sorry. I didn't see everything you've done for us, for me, but I see it now. You are the reason this family is still together, and I will never forget that." A lump formed in my throat, but I managed a small smile. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said softly, my voice wavering. "That means a lot." I felt a lump in my throat, but I managed a small smile. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said softly, my voice shaking. "That means a lot." David squeezed my hand under the table, his pride evident in the way he looked at me. David squeezed my hand under the table, and the way he looked at me showed his pride. After dinner, as the guests began to leave, Evelyn pulled me aside in the kitchen. After dinner, as people were starting to leave, Evelyn took me aside in the kitchen. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her tone earnest. "About Lauren, about me. I let her take advantage of me because it was easier than admitting I'd made mistakes. But I won't let that happen again. I've been thinking about what you said," she started, sounding very serious. "About Lorian and about me. I let her take advantage of me because it was easier than admitting I made mistakes, but I won't let that happen again." Hearing her acknowledge the pattern was more than I'd hoped for. "It's not easy to break old habits," I said gently, "but you're trying, and that's what matters." Hearing her admit her old behavior was more than I had expected. "It's hard to change old habits," I said gently, "but you are trying, and that is what's important." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You've taught me more than I can put into words, Natalie. I don't know how to repay you." She nodded, a small smile on her face. "You've taught me so much, Natalie. I don't know how I can ever thank you." "You don't have to repay me," I replied. "Just keep moving forward. That's all I need." "You don't have to thank me," I responded. "Just keep moving forward. That's all I need from you." That night, as David and I drove home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The journey with Evelyn hadn't been easy, and there was still work to be done, but we were in a better place, one built on mutual respect and understanding. That night, on the drive home with David, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My journey with Evelyn had been difficult and there was still more to do, but we were in a better place, one built on respect and understanding. For so long, I'd sought validation from her, believing that my worth depended on her approval. But now I realized that I didn't need her to see me to know my own value. Evelyn's recognition was a bonus, not the foundation. For so long, I had wanted her approval, thinking my value depended on it, but now I realized I didn't need her to see me to know my own worth. Evelyn's recognition was a good thing, not the basis of my self-worth. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on everything we'd been through. I wasn't just the daughter-in-law anymore. I was a vital part of this family, not because of what I'd done, but because of who I was. And that, I realized, was enough. Lying in bed that night, I thought about everything we had been through. I was no longer just the daughter-in-law. I was an essential part of this family, not because of what I had done, but because of who I was. And I realized that was enough.